Alright, we're now a little over a month into the 2023-24 season, and we're starting to get a much better grip on whether or not the performances of certain players are going to be sustainable or not. For example, Klay Thompson had a bit of a slow start to the year, but is now starting to turn things around a bit and play to the level that we know he can. On the opposite side of the spectrum, though, there have been a few players this season who are playing a lot better than most people thought they would based on how they've performed in years past. Not only are these guys turning things around for themselves, but their level of play has helped their teams out a ton as well. These 5 players had less than ideal seasons in 2022-23, but have looked much better this season and have proved a lot of people wrong. So in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down these guys' games and how they managed to surprise everyone. So if you're new to the channel and enjoy this content, please remember to like and subscribe. Not only does liking this video help it out in the YouTube algorithm, but I'm also trying to reach 1,500 subscribers by the halfway point of the NBA season, and any help with that is appreciated. Also, keep in mind that this list isn't really a ranking, so it's not in any particular order based on who's playing better than the other, but with that out of the way, let's get into it. Coming in at number 5, we have everyone's favorite villain, Dillon Brooks. Now, Dillon Brooks is a guy I was basically done with at the end of last season, as not only was he a detriment to the Grizzlies offensively, but he said a lot of reckless things that made both him and the Grizzlies look pretty stupid. Now though, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that he's proving me wrong big time, and I'm honestly pretty happy for the guy. Dillon Brooks is a guy I honestly liked a good bit early on in his career. Yeah, he had some very obvious flaws, but I'm kind of a sucker for hustle and defensive effort guys, and that's exactly what Brooks was. It just took him as emerging as a bit of a douchebag while playing like ass for me to lose love. But in the 2023-24 season though, he still remains the asshole he always has been, but he's actually playing some really good ball on offense. Through 14 games, he's averaging 13 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists a game, while shooting a career high 47% from the field and 46% from 3 on 4 attempts a game. Now, I don't think his 3-point shooting is necessarily sustainable, but it's clear he's turned it around offensively to start the year, and there's good reason to believe he can remain a positive as the year goes on. For starters, Brooks is shooting the ball a good bit less than he was allowed to in Memphis, which is a good thing. Brooks is taking about 10 field goals and 4 threes a game, both of which are his lowest since 2018, and it's honestly kind of surprising to see Brooks playing so well and controlled on what on paper was supposed to be a much worse Rockets team than the Grizzlies were last season, and honestly, I think some of it has to do with coaching. Now, I don't think Taylor Jenkins is a bad coach by any means, but judging by how much stuff goes on with players on the team and the way he acts sometimes during press conferences or even on the floor during games, it definitely doesn't look like he does the best job at not enabling his players to act the way they do. Compared to Ime Udoka, who in my opinion is not only a better coach, but does a much better job at getting players to buy into what he's saying. In addition to this, the offense Udoka runs and the players around him force the ball out of Brooks' hands a ton, which would help explain why he has the lowest usage rate of his career. A lot of this has to do with how often he's been assisted on his shots compared to years prior. For example, this season he's being assisted on 80% of his total shots compared to last year when he was assisted on just 57%, which, for a player of Brooks' abilities, is just insanely bad. Brooks never really should have been used as more than anything than a spot-up shooter or off-ball cutter, and the Rockets know that and have been using him properly for probably the first time in his career, and it's paid off very well. Even outside of coaching things, Brooks has just improved really in all aspects on offense. He's leaking out on break, which is leading to a lot of points for the Rockets, is shooting a career high at the rim, and again, like I said, is hitting his threes at an absurdly good rate. And for the first time in a while, isn't a total offensive negative when on the floor. This season, the Rockets have an offensive rating of 115.6 with Brooks on the floor, which is in the 63rd percentile, but with him off, it drops down to 109.9, which is in the 22nd percentile. And defensively, he's still been great in a large part as to why the Rockets are tied for the best defensive rating in the NBA at the time of this recording. Defense was never really a problem for him though, it was always his offense, and it's honestly, again, really great to see both he and the Rockets finally turn things around in just one offseason. Hopefully though, Brooks can keep up this consistency as the season goes on. I doubt he's still shooting 46% from 3 by the end of the season, but there's few reasons for him not to be an at least above league average shooter for the year. Brooks has really proven a lot of people wrong, including myself, and has honestly been one of my favorite redemption arcs from the start of this season. At number 4, we have Hawks forward Jaylen Johnson, and for some of the bigger NBA or even just Hawks fans in general, this might not be a crazy surprise, but for the casual fan base, the rise of Jaylen Johnson might be something that not many saw coming. Johnson was the 20th pick in the 2021 draft out of Duke and had a very quiet first 2 seasons, averaging an efficient 2 and 5 points per game, respectively. This year, though, Johnson has really exploded onto the scene, playing very well on both sides of the ball, and has done a great job helping keep the Hawks afloat despite the slow start from Trae Young. Through 15 games, Johnson is averaging 14 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists per game, while shooting an absurd 59% from the field and 42% from 3 on about 3 attempts a game. The rise of Jaylen Johnson this season has both been very fun and kind of weird to watch. For starters, he's hitting his threes at a really good rate, like I mentioned, however, he's really never been a very good shooter. For example, he shot just about 28% from range in his first 2 seasons, and while yes, he did shoot 44% from 3 in his lone season at college, it was just on 1 attempt a game through 13 games, so it's really hard to judge that year in terms of him as a shooter. But this begs the question of if his shooting is sustainable or not. And while I don't think he's going to be shooting 42% from 3 by the end of the season, I still think he's going to remain solid from behind the arc at the end of the year. He definitely has a ton of work to do in terms of shot mechanics, but the fact that he's been so good despite having these issues is incredibly promising. I will say a lot of Johnson's shooting efficiency comes from the fact that he's a big beneficiary of the gravity that both Trae Young and DeJounte Murray bring. Not only has he been assisted on all of his 3-point makes this season, but about 2 of his 3 attempts a game have been wide open. So it's clear that a lot of the reason he's been such a good shooter is because of the things around him. Regardless, it doesn't change the fact that he's improved nonetheless. In fact, the improvement from 3 has been one of, if not the biggest reason for the jump he's made, as now, with the way defenders respect him, it allows him to abuse one of his best traits as a scorer, which is attacking closeouts. Johnson has been one of the best players at the rim this season in general. Not only is he taking 48% of his shots from 0 to 4 feet, which is in the 92nd percentile, but he's hitting them at a 73% rate, while also hitting 47% of his shots from 4 to 14 feet. And a lot of this has to do with the way he's able to attack closeouts and the spacing that playing on one of the best 3-point shooting teams comes with. Alongside attacking closeouts, Johnson is also pretty damn incredible on breaks. Whether he's getting a rebound and using his great speed for a coast-to-coast dunk, catching a lob from Trae Young, or even making some nice passes of his own, Johnson does a bit of everything, and his overall feel on fast break plays is really impressive for his age. I will say, there's not much else to Johnson's game aside from his abilities as a 3-point shooter and finisher at the rim, but there really doesn't need to be, considering how good he's been at both of these aspects. Johnson's rare combination of speed, size, and strength make him an ideal play finisher alongside guys like Trae Young, and with the way new head coach Quinn Snyder has been using him compared to Nate McMillan, you can begin to see why Johnson's rise might not have been super surprising to some. Johnson is 6'9", 220 pounds with a 6'11" wingspan and is super agile and fast on both sides of the ball, which makes for a perfect fit on this Hawks team. And not only is he great on offense like I've talked about, but his defense can get overlooked as well, as on the season he's averaging about a block and steal per game, and while this doesn't always determine how great of a defender someone is, it definitely helps to paint a bigger picture. Jaylen Johnson uses a lot of those strengths I mentioned, like his strength, speed, and really elite overall athleticism, to be a pretty versatile guy on defense. He isn't perfect, but Johnson's really active on that side of the ball and has pretty good feel for his age and experience. He has the strength and physicality to guard wings and bigs, and the speed and agility to keep up with guards on occasion. To keep it simple, Johnson's already been a great player for the Hawks on both sides of the ball, despite being somewhat inexperienced for being in his 3rd season. He has some things to work on as a shooter, ball handler, and even on defense despite how good he's been, but the fact that he's looked this great with these issues is really promising, and I'm honestly really excited to see what the future holds for him. Up next, we have Heat wing Duncan Robinson, who surprised me a ton this year because honestly, Based on how the last 2 seasons have looked for him, I kind of thought his career was maybe not over, but not going to be nearly as long as I thought it would be. But just like Dillon Brooks, he's proven me wrong and has completely revived his three-point shooting, and it's been a big part of the Heat's offense thus far. Over the last 2 seasons, Duncan Robinson was really a shell of his former self, and it made that massive contract extension he received in the 2021 offseason look really, really bad. And while his three-point shooting didn't really take a dip until last season, he shot 39% from the field between 2021 and 2023, and was really just a liability on both sides of the ball. This year, though, he's completely turning things around, and with the Heat losing both Max Strus and Gabe Vincent this offseason, it really could not have come at a much better time. Through his first 15 games this season, Robinson is averaging 14 points, which is a career high, 3 rebounds and 3 assists a game, while shooting 46% from the field and 43% from 3 on 7 attempts. And while he's not a good defender, he was never going to be, so I'm not going to talk about that side of the ball too much because it would just be wasting everyone's time. But Robinson has looked really good all around on offense this season, and it's really hard to kind of say where he's improved, other than the simple fact that his threes are falling again because it's the biggest part of his game. I will say, though, that he's actually spreading his shot selection around a little more than usual, which isn't saying much, as Robinson still shoots 63% of his shots from beyond the arc, but it's actually a career low by almost 20%, and he's shooting 26% of his shots at the rim now, which is a career high, and is hitting them at a pretty decent rate. A lot of the reason for this jump in shot attempts at the rim does have to do with the fact that Robinson has improved a good bit as a ball handler, and with how often he shoots threes, defenders don't really expect him to drive on closeouts, and it's something he's really starting to take advantage of. So while yeah, a lot of it does have to do with the fact that he's finally hitting his threes again, it definitely helps that Robinson's finally starting to improve in other aspects as well. Obviously, a 15-game sample size isn't the most ideal thing in the world, but given his history as a shooter aside from really last season, there's plenty of reasons to believe that his scoring and efficiency can be sustainable by the end of the year. Overall, I don't really have much else to say about Robinson. He's still the same player he always has been for the most part, with a little added spice of some improved ball handling. It's great to see him hitting his threes again, though, because it really does add a lot to the Heat's offense, and hopefully he can keep this up as the year goes on. At number 2, we have Jaylen Suggs, and while on paper, his offensive numbers haven't improved a crazy amount, on film, he looks significantly better on both sides of the ball, and has been a huge part of a Magic team that's currently tied for second in the East. Last season, his efficiency did improve from his rookie year, but his points per game dropped to a little under 10, and it's really hard for me to say he had maybe more than a handful of quote-unquote great or standout games, especially in the second half of that season. This year, though, he's already eclipsed double-digit points 12 times through 15 games, and this is something he did just 25 times through 53 games last season. In addition, he's also started every game he's played this year compared to just 19 last season. For a while, there was a big question surrounding which guard the Magic could trade, as he simply had so much young talent in the backcourt in the form of Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, Jaylen Suggs, now Anthony Black, and it was tough to be able to tell if they could make it work, and throughout most of last season, it was pretty much agreed upon that Suggs was the odd man out. Now with his improvements on offense, alongside the value he brings on defense, it's really hard for them to trade Suggs without facing some pretty big consequences on the court. On the season, Suggs is averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals a game, while shooting 43% from the field and 36% from 3 on 4 attempts. So overall, nothing too crazy on offense, but he's undoubtedly improved as a shooter and has looked way more fluid in the Magic's offense in terms of his abilities as an off-ball mover. Even when attacking defenders off the dribble, he's looked a lot better, which would help explain why his percentage at the rim has increased by nearly 10%, despite taking nearly the same amount of shots from 0 to 4 feet as he did last season. Defensively, though, Suggs has been special, plain and simple. Not only is he incredibly active as an on-ball defender, but his instincts on defense make it really easy to poke the ball away and force offensive players into tough spots. Alongside this, he's also really active in passing lanes and in the off-ball, which is something that not every young guard really excels at. He's been a huge part of the surge we've seen from the Magic this season, and it's personally surprised me a lot. We always knew he'd be a good defender, but he looks so much better on that end than ever before. And for his offense, he may not be making a massive statistical jump, but watching film, he's scoring way more fluidly than ever before, and has finally found his place alongside guys like Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Another part of his game that's kind of fun to watch is his playmaking. His numbers aren't too crazy, but he's made some really nice plays both as a ball handler or even just as a relay guy, which again goes back into how he finally fits into this offense. Overall, though, I'm really excited to see what Suggs continues to do as the season goes on. Hopefully, the Magic continue to use him the right way and he keeps up this level of consistency on both sides of the ball. If so, there's really no telling what the ceiling for both Suggs and this Magic team could be. And finally, at number 1, we have Tyrese Haliburton. And while yeah, he was an all-star last season, the jump he's made this year has me thinking he could be a perennial All-NBA player, and at this rate with the way he's improving, one of, if not the best point guards in the NBA for a long time. Like, Haliburton is only 23 years old and is putting up numbers we never saw Hall of Fame point guards come close to, and he's doing it all on a Pacers team that's currently 5th in the East. Haliburton is leading the NBA's best offense by far, and is doing so while having his team play at the fastest pace in the league as well. The jump he's made as both a playmaker and scorer is simply absurd, and it really has some fans questioning their pre-draft takes on him. On the season, Haliburton's averaging 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 12 assists a game, while shooting 51% from the field, 45% from 3 on 8 attempts, and 91% from the free throw line. So not only is he averaging 25 and 12, which is already rare to see from a point guard, but he's doing this while being in the 50-40-90 club. Only time will tell if the efficiency numbers stick, but he's never shot below 40% from 3 and has always been really efficient in general, so even if he doesn't stay 50-40-90, there's a real chance he's still around that range by the end of the season. Haliburton's already making his case for one of the most important players in the league, because in the only game he's missed this season, the Pacers lost by 55 points to the Celtics, and alongside this, when Haliburton's off the floor, the Pacers' offensive rating drops by nearly 10 points, and they have a point differential of -10. I personally figured that Haliburton would continue to improve as his career went on, but the rate at which he's doing this is something I'm not sure really anyone expected. Like, not only does he have the case to be the best playmaker in the NBA, but he's been one of the best scoring guards as well, which is honestly kind of funny to think about when you look at the way he shoots the ball, which has nothing to do with his game, but is still something I always find funny when I watch him play. There was a moment this season where Haliburton had ripped off 32 assists in 2 games without turning the ball over even once, which is like almost impossible to do. And this is without mentioning that he managed to score 25 and 33 in both of those games as well. I talked about Haliburton and the Pacers a little bit in a video I made before the season started, and I was a good bit higher on them than a lot of people I saw before the season, and even then, both of them have surpassed my expectations by a good bit, especially Haliburton. There were a lot of conflicting opinions surrounding him last season, and there really wasn't much middle ground, as there was like seemingly a hive that thought he was a top 5 point guard, and another side that thought he wasn't even top 10 and that he was just putting up empty stats on a bad team. Now, he's easily proved his doubters wrong and has been one of the best players in the entire league throughout the start of the season. The jump both he and the Pacers have made this season has created some of the most entertaining basketball in the league, and I'm really excited to see where the squad ends up by the end of the season. For just Haliburton though, he's easily primed to make an All-NBA team for the first time in his career if he keeps this up, which is honestly something I don't think a ton of people expected from the guy coming into the league, let alone in just his 4th season. But with that being said, I'm going to wrap things up here. Let me know if there's anyone you guys thought should have been included on the list in the comment section below, because there's definitely a couple guys I was kind of balancing and struggling with if I should put them on or not, as well as your overall thoughts on this kind of content, as it's definitely not my usual style. Please remember to like and subscribe though, so I can reach my goal of 1,500 subscribers by the halfway point of the season. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.